All right, I want to welcome to the show Joshua Brewer. He is a labor organizer and a representative of the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, the Mid-South Council. He has been organizing workers at Amazon in Bessemer, Alabama. Josh, welcome to the program.
Hey, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. All right. People have been following this, obviously, across the country.
Sure.
Give us a sense, though. I mean, we hear different stories about what it's like to work for Amazon. What are the Amazon workers in Bessemer in particular looking to improve? I mean, why are they looking to unionize?
Sure. I think, ultimately workers reached out to us with late last summer, which is surprising being that this facility was opened in March of last year. So literally 3 to 4 months after the facility grand opened, they were reaching out to us. They had a tremendous amount of complaints, a lot of disorganization, overall just heat in the warehouse, a variety of things, break times, being terminated for unjust reasons. But their overwhelming concern was just a lack of overall empathy or care for what their concerns or their desires were. They didn't know who to report their issues to. If they were having COVID concerns or COVID questions, there was nobody to answer them. Their emails went unanswered. They felt unsafe. Overall, they just felt underrepresented. I think that's really been a key word that's come up a lot throughout this campaign, is this level of representation or really advocacy, somebody that's on their side. We all know what Amazon is interested in, and that's getting those packages out the door. But I think workers really walked into this kind of overwhelming sense of just being disposable and being uncared for. And so it was really just about a variety of things that would really only come through somebody looking out for their needs.
What is it about a Bessemer that this is happening there? I mean, there's Amazon plan, and I know there was an attempt in I think it was Staten Island.
Sure.
I've lost track of time, but I feel like it was 9 months ago or somewhere around there. But what is it about Bessemer in particular that this is happening there as opposed to anywhere else across the country?
Sure. I think it's a particular time and space. I think if for those that are shocked or surprised that workers in Bessemer would organize, or even workers in the South would organize, I would say that those folks haven't been paying good enough attention. I think the last, handful of years, we've seen people rising up across this country. It's been no secret, this facility is majority Black, and you've seen people across our country really recognizing the need to address some systemic issues and things that are going on in the Black community. And really have felt a sense of support from our country that I think they haven't felt maybe ever, right? Regionally, there's been a lot of division and things that have happened over the last 50 years, as everybody knows. And I think for these folks, this is really a time and place where they feel empowered by the nation. They feel like they have support of the nation. And therefore, they've always been fighters. I think it just took a level of recognition that there was some problems and some pains here, and then some support to feel like, we're empowered to take on this fight ourselves, and that we can find real improvements and real lasting change that's contractual. I mean, the very idea of taking your labor back, taking the power of my own labor back and placing it into my community where we work and live, and making sure that our concerns are first. We understand that Bessemer and cities where Amazon goes often eat a lot of tax breaks to subsidize these buildings. And ultimately, look, this is a fight to say all that's well and good, but we have concerns, we have needs, and we have things that we want to see addressed.
And there's a bit of a tradition in that area too of unionizing. I mean, one wouldn't, at least in the modern era, one wouldn't have known that, but there's a strong tradition in union. In fact, Doug Jones, I think his, if I recall correctly, grandfather maybe in mining, or there is some history there in terms of unionization.
Sure. It's actually fascinating. There was a steel unionized facility on the very grounds where Amazon sits, right? And so this is a fight that was already taking place literally where they're standing for these same kind of things. And so Bessemer absolutely has long been a deep union tradition. And again, Birmingham, Bessemer, this is all very conjoined together. Obviously, a deep history of civil rights activism, of fighting for positive change, and likely some of the hardest of circumstances. And so this is not the first time, and we don't think it's going to be the last.
Some of the reports I've heard out of Bessemer about from Amazon is like, we pay 16 bucks an hour. How does that rate relative around there? Because I mean, and I think we'll go into sort of the working conditions there, right? I mean, this is a very difficult job. And in fact, I want to talk a little bit more about that, but in terms of just sheer pay, if I work at Amazon in Bessemer, am I getting, good pay or the best pay if I've just come out of high school, let's say?
Sure. I think, look, coming out of high school is one thing. I mean, obviously we all had our first job. And I think when you look at our second job and when you look at $15 an hour, that's what we're fighting as a nation to raise the minimum standard to. So I think when you look and when you ask me, is 15 or is wage really an issue with this campaign? It absolutely is. And it's a real issue simply for the fact that this is very difficult work. It's challenging work, and we're also living in a city environment with a city-scaled economy. And $15 an hour is not particularly great inside of Birmingham and Bessemer area. Yes, the amount of jobs that were brought to Bessemer was great. But when you look at even warehouses that we have under union contracts, here within 10 miles of this warehouse, similar warehouses with scales of $18, $19, $20 an hour coming from a small business. These are coming from local regional grocery warehouses or packing warehouses, and they're paying $18, $19, $20 an hour with 240 hours a year of sick time. To be honest, it's beginning to get offensive for me, where it's like the one question that continues to come up is, well, the $15 an hour. And what's amazing is the working people here are also getting offended because they say, listen, like, I'm kind of tired of people saying we should be grateful for $15 an hour because it's $29,000, $30,000 a year. And I don't know if you've ran a budget in a city environment with that kind of wages. Yes. Are we going to starve? No. Can we go to the beach this year? No. Can we get the nice cleats for the softball league? No. We got to go buy the hand-me-downs or the thrift store. So this is not a wage to be celebrated. Amazon has really tried to run that across the country. And it's amazing to me because in an economy like the South, where wages are obviously lower, we still are struggling to make it on $15 an hour, right? And so I think you were alluding to it. You add in the level of work and how difficult the actual taxing of the nature of the job. 15 is actually the lowest that I could even find in this area.
When you talk about those regional warehouses for local supermarkets, just out of curiosity, the CEOs of those, are they making billions upon billions of dollars over the course of COVID? I mean, I'm just curious if any of those regional warehouses have owners who are saying, I don't know what to do with my money. I may have to figure out a way of going to Mars so I can spend it. I'm just curious.
No, it's pretty incredible, actually. I think you know the answer, and it's a great question. I mean, these folks look, we sit down with some of these smaller businesses and regional businesses, and we negotiate these contracts. And they open up their books, and they say, here's the books. Here's what we made last year. Look, I started this business. I'd like to make a little more than the employees. Obviously, that's understandable. And so we look at that, and then we do common sense wage increases, make sure that their employees are taken care of. Everybody shakes hands. They've got happy employees. They make plenty of money. It's a functioning society. Amazon just doesn't want to participate in that, to your point, because $75 billion a year profit for one man is nice.
We've been, talking a little bit about some of the anti-union tactics that Amazon's been deploying, something like $25 million worth of anti-union tactics, including changing the timing of stoplights so that organizers aren't able to talk to their fellow workers. But there's also been a program of where they have hired, and my understanding is that most of the upper management there are white. They have hired anti-union consultants who are Black to meet one-on-one with workers in the factory. Tell me about that dynamic. I'm curious about it.
Yeah, sure. So they've had union busting consultants there since, really November, slowly after they realized that their workers were organizing and it was really grabbing root. And I think, those, yes, to your point, upper management, generally very white. Union busters have been majority black. But so that when the ballots actually went out, they had to stop the captive audience meetings. So first they were forcing everyone to come into like a classroom style meeting, and really like teach them, about the union, right? Which I think is interesting. They even formulated it as a class. And so they would teach them about the union. If an activist they'd call us and they'd say, listen, they're lying. They're saying you're gonna force us to pay union dues. And can I throw this meeting? Say, well, that's your choice. You can ask questions. And so a union activist will stand up and ask a question. They're called to the front of the room. They take a picture of their ID. They're removed from the meeting. You're no longer allowed to participate. That's the kind of environment that's been created there. Is almost now you're cast out. It's like everybody wonders, ooh, like where are they going? Like where are they sending them? Right? I mean, it's bizarre. And I think once they had to stop those classroom meetings, now they legally can still do one-on-one interactions. And so at $3,200 a day, which is what each consultant is being paid, that's filed on their LMs. So they're paying each one $3,200 a day.
Wow.
To approach 6,000 workers on a one-on-one basis. How many of those consultants must they have going around that facility? So they'll approach them with water and candy, and they'll basically just interrogate them on their, in creative ways to try to figure out if they're a supporter or not.
Wow. $3,200. I mean, I think people should understand. Well, let's hold that for a moment. The one other thing I just read in Mike Elk's payday report, that one of the things that they're trying to do in busting the union or prevent or convincing people not to vote for it is to sort of wedge between older and younger workers. If I come out of high school and, there's a sort of almost like a warrior mentality that you need to have to work at a place like this because it's so physically taxing.
Right.
How much is that, at play? Like how are they sort of like stoking that?
Sure. No, I think it's real. It's been an effort on their part to really confuse younger workers with this idea that, to your point, and they have to work very quickly. Everything is tracked. Their production is tracked. If you want to make it to the top of the ladder, you got to have the best production. And so, as we know, we were probably at our best physically producing selves at 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah, as far as I can remember. But yeah.
Right. And so it's this idea that when the union comes, the union is going to promise things based on seniority. And they're going to ask that increases and promotions are based on seniority, because yes, in fact, unions believe that there should be something given to the person that was loyal and give you the best years of their life, that you would in turn take care of them in maybe not their best years. I think that's not that radical of a thought, but yeah, so that is a union thought. But we've had to walk back and explain to younger workers that, listen, there's always ways to improve and exceed beyond seniority. If you look at nearly any union contract, the language is simply the most senior employee also with the ability to perform the job, right? And so there is some reasonable lines here that are drawn, but that, look, these older workers that are slow, they're going to stand in the way of your progress and you moving forward. And, ultimately, obviously, that is a wedge, and they're trying to really drive that home.
How much has COVID played into this? Both, and I think you've already touched on this maybe a little bit in terms of like, what it has brought about, right? I mean, there's far more intense, far more danger, like literally,
Sure.
health danger in the course of a pandemic. How has it made organizing more difficult from your perspective?
I would say the difficulty is with any movement, especially like this, which was truly just unbelievable how fast and exciting and engaged people were and really took ownership of this, and the community and everybody that's involved. I think that when you look at that feeling of camaraderie or people really gathering in large groups, we miss that. It's very important to really have that kind of feeling. In an environment like Amazon with COVID, there's no large break area where workers gather and talk. There's none of this really, even to a simple part of organizing a party. People have parties, work parties after work, and then workers come and gather and they talk about the union and they talk about different things. And there's really this dynamic that's missing with COVID. I think that's for a lot of us, but it's really bled into organizing too, where you are missing that kind of connection. We can't even rent meeting spaces to even host people. And so much of it has been done virtually, over the phone, in communities and parks, open spaces, but really missing that kind of closeness. I think that has affected the organizing. But on the same level, I think workers also were more apt to organize when they learned through COVID that their employers don't really care about their safety. So I think on one hand, it spurred organizing. On the other hand, it's certainly a challenge.
How has I mean, I imagine you do, if you're doing the Mid-South Council organizing, you're probably more used to organizing in a so-called right to work state than anything else. How does that play in? I mean, the idea of, because, I've been curious in the wake of Janus, what the implications have been for public sector workers, where there's no, like the resistance to a union. One of the big, pitching points they used to say was like, you're going to have to pay, and they're going to take a big chunk out of your check. And that's not the case, because you're not forced to pay even agency fees. You're doing work. You got lawyers who are going to organize, who are going to negotiate a better deal. Maybe it's more cash. Maybe it's also better breaks, et cetera, et cetera. You're not going to work in a steam house.
Right.
Somebody's got to pay them, but they're not required to. So how does that does it make your job easier on some level, or how does that come to play?
Sure. I think it's just different. I've been asked this a lot, and I really had to kind of think about what it would be like to organize in a non-right to work state and what that would look like. I think the law is designed to weaken unions. It's designed to weaken unions in the fact that it's very time consuming. Even if all employees, which has been our experience, once we organize a shop, we bring good benefits, we bring good representation, majority of employees join. It's not really that big of a problem. But the problem comes from having to, literally the time it takes to go and fill out. Everybody individually has to have these different forms and different joining things. And with high turnover facilities, it really creates a tremendous amount of just overall burden on the union to keep up with it. Most workers, again, in our experience, join the union. And so, when it comes to organizing, look, if we weren't right to work, we'd have stronger unions, and we'd have more ability to organize bigger and better. And so, does it help in some ways to maybe say, hey, there's not as much of a commitment up front. We can kind of show you what we can do, and then you can make that decision. I think that might help. But overall, when you look at the negatives to it and how much it really weakens what we're able to do as far as being able to organize on bigger and better scales, obviously it's not an advantage, I think, by any stretch of the imagination. Right. But it can be, in some ways, certainly. Amazon has very much tried to misinform workers and say that they're going to have to pay those agency fees, and they're going to have to pay dues. But it's just, again, they've told a lot of lies, so it's nothing new.
I'm not terribly shocked by that.
Yeah,
to be honest. What's interesting about this and why people should care across the country is because Amazon, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I can't imagine that Amazon, like I say, the billions of dollars that are just, that are just flowing through them, that they really care that much about what happens in one warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama. What they care about is if it happens in Bessemer, what happens in Bessemer does not stay in Bessemer. Right? Like if there's one place in the country where unionization works, then they're very nervous about that, right? I mean, they're not spending $25 million and putting people on the floor who have, $3,200 a day because they're worried about this, paying an extra buck to, just these workers. Is that right?
No, you're spot on, Sam. You're spot on. Amazon, look, I'll tell you what really Amazon, the beautiful thing about this is it's too late for Amazon. What Amazon was terrified of already happened. And that was that the federal government would certify an election at one of their warehouses, because it shows unequivocally, scientifically, that over 2,500 or 2,700 of their own workers wanted to form a union, as verified by the federal government. Okay. And that was the fear the whole time, because once it became public that this isn't some disgruntled workers, this isn't some, groups over here that are just coming after Amazon. This is a very real systematic problem between Amazon and the relationship with their workforce. And once that became known on a real scale like it has now, I think the organizing activities are going to pop up all over the country, and not just at Amazon, all over. And so I think that is what they were afraid of. I think that is how you go from 2,000 employees to 6,000 employees in the matter of 3 months. I think that is how you do all the things they've done to try to, like you said, to try to stop this ever from becoming even to this place. Because a coin flip election is too close for Amazon's comfort. They can't even stand the thought of a coin flip. And so, I'm excited and encouraged because A, I believe we're going to win this campaign. But B, I believe we've already accomplished what Amazon did not want to happen. And that is simply proving that their employees want a union. Whether they, illegally or legally try to stop this from happening, you can't argue that they wanted a union. And so that's the problem for Amazon.
Well, you just answered my question, my one of my last questions, which is, are these guys going to get, and women, are they going to get a union?
I think they are. We're seeing an incredible amount of excitement, momentum. Again, it's never, and we've never said that we felt like we would win this election on a landslide simply because of a lot of the tactics Amazon has done. But this has always been a very real, very exciting campaign with thousands of workers that really want a union. And so we feel like we're going to win. We definitely do.
And just to clarify, how many votes do you need? Like, you need just a majority of the people who vote, right? Not a majority of the people in the shop.
Correct. Yeah. Majority vote. So, obviously we're expecting a pretty good turnout with just the polarity of the campaign and with the amount of excitement we have on our side. We're expecting a large turnout. But with, it's simply just a +1. So if there's for math, if there's 1,000 votes, whoever gets 501 wins. And you win the entire unit, which also speaks to, again, Amazon's desperation up front to stop the actual certification, that they were willing to offer up the entire warehouse to be organized. And so if 501 workers in that scenario voted, all 6,000 workers would become union workers. And so they really went full throat to stop it. And now we'll see if it pays off on the back end, but we think we're going to win.
And I think there's 3 more weeks to vote. And lastly, I'm in New York State. What do if I want to help in any way, what do I do? Is there anything I can do?
Look, as crazy as it is, social media is a real tool. I mean, it's a real tool that creates buzz, sharing things that are going on, sharing articles that are being written by journalists, sharing shows like this, getting the message out really is a tool that people can use in solidarity, because what it does is it creates so much buzz that then it kind of brings other people out to the forefront that should have been involved. And so, look, I think having the president of the United States, having these different sports organizations and political figures, and now community leaders, and all of that was created by the buzz of just regular people saying, yo, everybody should pay attention. There's a real thing going down in Alabama. That's what created this. And now we have teams of hundreds of volunteers on the ground that have come down and rented up every Airbnb in town just to offer their help. I mean, it's a full-blown battle for these last 3 weeks, and it's going to be fun. It's exciting. And we think we're going to bring it home.
Good luck. Joshua Brewer, organizer, representative from the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Thanks so much for your time, man. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, folks.